This is Have You Met? My guest today is an award-winning jazz singer, songwriter, and inspirational speaker who lost all her residual hearing by the age of 19. In 2017, she came fourth in America's Got Talent. Her debut performance on the show convinced Simon Cowell to give her the golden buzzer, and afterwards he compared her to Adele. I don't know what's more impressive, her angelic voice, her incredible lyrics, the fact she does it all without hearing, or just what a wonderfully open and genuine person she is. This was one of my favourite conversations for this podcast so far, and I hope you enjoy it. Have you met Mandy Harvey? So Mandy, tell me a little bit more about your childhood and how you discovered your love for music.
I grew up very hard of hearing, and so my mom ended up putting me in a choir class when I was about 4 years old, and I was sitting in a room full of adults. I wasn't really supposed to be there. I was the only young kid there. And so they handed me the sheet music for what they were working on for that performance, and it was the first time that I actively remember being able to see the words of what people were about to say. So it was like this massive, overwhelming emotional moment where I was a part of the conversation instead of looking at it from a distance and being lost. And so I got to be a part of something. And that really, it made a massive impact on just my perception of community and being connected with other people. And there's something quite glorious about the arts, whether it's music, dance, or physical drawings and paintings and whatnot. It is such a beautiful way for you to express yourself, but specifically with choir, you get to be a part of a team to create something beautiful. And I was always very shy and very awkward. And so being able to be a part of something without feeling like they're full focal point of people staring at me was there. Yeah. It gave me the freedom to kind of really belong. And I wanted to bring that expression. I wanted to bring that community, and I wanted to bring this beautiful opportunity for a person to be a person and be part of something. I truly do believe that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, your religious beliefs, your political viewpoints, how you cook your eggs in the morning. You know, you get to be a part of music regardless of who you are. And so there's no judgment. It was just beautiful. And that led me to deciding with time that I wanted to be a music teacher so that I could give that to other students as my life goal.
Wow, that's amazing. At 4 years old. So your early memories then, what was it like your hearing at that point? Do you at that kind of age? I mean, obviously
crap. It was pretty crap. I'll be honest. When I first was born, I didn't turn to sound. And then with time, I eventually turned to sound, but I had so many ear infections and so many surgeries and so many chunks of time when my eardrums just stopped vibrating for one reason or another that I really did spend most of my childhood either being hard of hearing or not hearing at all. And it led me to really being very isolated. I don't think that was the intention of the people who knew me, but when you have a barrier for communication, it feels very limiting. And it played into kind of how I viewed myself and the stress and the struggle. And you know how kids are, if you make one mistake, they're going to blow up everything. And when you're lip reading, you make mistakes all the time. You misunderstand things all the time. So I was genuinely afraid to open my mouth unless I was really confident that I wasn't going to be making a fool of myself. And so being a part of choir, I always knew what the words were supposed to be when they were supposed to be there. And so it was the one time of my day that I could just relax and breathe and feel like I belonged.
Yeah. So you'd work on the songs and stuff at home, I suppose, and master them and that kind of thing, all the lyrics and the order and everything.
Oh yeah, of course. I was a very, very, very committed student. I was a
Yeah.
nerd. I loved the music theory. I loved working hard and I loved memorizing. And as funny as it seems, being a hard of hearing kid, I'm an auditory learner. It's just the way that I learn. And so I would just absorb information and coupled with being able to see it, obviously, but I would just absorb it. And so I would memorize so quickly. And I used to be so cool. Like, I would just like suck in like 16-part choral music after listening to it a couple of times and going through it with the sheet music, just bam,
Wow.
done. And some of those songs, even from when I was 4, like I can still sing them today. I don't forget that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
which is
that's
cool.
amazing. Yeah. And when did you start playing instruments and stuff as well?
I started playing guitar because my dad played guitar, and my dad was also kind of a withdrawn, shy dude back then. He's not now. He's very like vivacious and very loud and very fun. He was always fun, but he was very much more internal. And so kind
Reserved.
of our way of bonding, and the reason why I started playing guitar was so I could play guitar with him. And that started probably late elementary school, early middle school. And
That's like
then,
teens, right?
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, a little earlier than teens, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, because you're not in the
Yeah,
US.
like a
Sorry.
no.
So I would say maybe like 10, 10, 11 years
Okay,
old.
cool. Yeah. I think that's where we start like secondary school in the
Yeah,
UK, roughly. Yeah,
yeah.
something like that. Okay. So that's when you started picking up instruments and you're still in the choir all the time through that period?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
hardcore. It's hardcore. When I was in high school, I was in 4 or 5 different choirs at the same time,
Wow.
and music theater and drama and whatever. If it was connected in any way, shape, or form with music and the arts, I was there all day.
Yeah. So you were totally immersed in it. Like it was
Oh,
like your
yeah,
life.
I was a straight up choir rat. Like I
Yeah.
ate my lunches in the choir room. Like I lived in that building. My senior year, I had because I have a connective tissue disorder called EDS. I ended up dislocating my leg my senior year, which was a bummer. But my first class of the day, I didn't have one. So I would roll in my wheelchair and watch men's choir, and I became like the men's choir mascot. It was just like, even if it wasn't mine, I was there and I was learning their music and I was getting as involved as I could.
Yeah.
I just loved it. It felt like home.
And then you'd go home and listen to some music and
Yeah.
chill out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I would work on my music.
Jam
I
with
would like
dad.
bring my stack of music home with me, and whatever I hadn't had like fully fleshed out, and I'd work on it. I was super popular. I
Yeah.
had zero friends. But it's okay. Like high school, middle school, all that stuff is very difficult to find real hardcore friendships anyway. I think that
Yeah, definitely.
you're
Were people
very
nice
young.
to you at least? Were the other kids nice to you, or
Yeah,
were they like mean?
I was a nice person, so they were nice to me. There's definitely, it was, I think people enjoyed being around me. I don't think that I was necessarily memorable. I always felt like I was not memorable. Like people didn't mind if I was there in the moment, but as soon as I left the room, like they forgot I existed. So like life would continue for them, but I would not be the person that they would remember to like invite for things.
Yeah,
And that was
yeah.
okay because I was very shy and awkward anyway,
And you were
having
too busy working on your music as
too
well.
busy. Yeah. And it wasn't even like a lot of kids now, they're listening to everything that is contemporary and now. And I was
Hmm.
not. Like even then, I was like listening to doo-wop and the 60s and 70s music and jazz. Like I was just like, oh, look at this interval. That's amazing. Like I was just a big old nerd. I loved it. I loved it. I still love it.
Yeah, I can tell. I can
Yeah.
tell. So how old were you when you started getting more into like the kind of the technical side of music and all the reading music, complicated sheets and things like that?
Oh,
And
by 11. Yeah. No,
oh wow,
I
yeah,
was in it young. I was in it young
yeah,
because, that was my way of learning it. Even when I was 4, like looking at the sheet music, I was actively looking at watching the notes move as I could feel and what I could hear at the time. I was watching it happen. So it was
yeah,
always something I was actively paying attention to. It took me to get to middle school or like 11 years old for me to be able to have teachers to be able to give me the information as to what all that stuff means. But I
yeah,
did, prior to that, I did take some piano lessons. And so I did know some basic music theory. And then by the time I was in high school, my choir teacher at the time, his name was Adam Cave, brilliant choral professor, love that man. Um, he really was a stickler for music theory, and he gave me so many tools that I use constantly every day, all day now, that
yeah.
really set me up for success with being able to figure out music even after losing my hearing.
Yeah, wow, which we're going to definitely get to
Yeah.
because that's amazing. What point did you start writing your own music? Was that am I risking jumping too far ahead there? I'm
I
assuming you
mean,
weren't a
it's a
young
bit of a
child.
jump. I didn't
Yeah.
start writing music until after I lost my hearing, mostly
Okay.
because I was genuinely afraid, and I had been told my entire life that you either are or you're not a writer. And when you
Ah,
don't write
it's
because you've
intense.
never written, you have this genuine fear, like you have this blank page in front of you and all of the judgment and all of the pressure that you put on yourself. It's hard sometimes to get one word out, and I
Mm.
needed to learn to not judge myself first before I was able to express myself.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Maybe we'll come try and circle back to your
Yeah.
your own songs and your writing and stuff a little bit later. But back to the kind of your earlier time, because we got these two paths going at the same time, and we got your music and that love and that passion, and at the same time your hearing loss, like
Yeah.
losing that, and they're kind of these two parallel roads that go in the same direction, but they're completely linked.
Yeah.
Um,
It,
yeah. So go on, go. Sorry.
it was always a fear. I think it was something that even when I was a kid, I was told that probably by 40 I would lose my hearing. And I had those tests that you do in school where that you put on those headphones and they
Mm.
beep on different
Yeah.
sides. You have to raise your hand. I've never passed one of those tests in my life, which I feel pretty good about. I am an excellent failure at this test, but I spent so much time at the audiologist and the ENT, and so much of the time people were telling me, they're like, well, maybe you should think about a different career. And I don't know if it was just stubbornness or I just really knew who I was. But it was the only time that I confidently ignored people,
Yeah.
and said that if I lose my hearing by 40, I'll lose my hearing by 40, and I will have already done something incredible,
Mm.
and it's worth it, because the problem, not really the problem, but it felt like the problem at the time. The problem was is that music was so much my identity. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just my passion, it was who I was. And to lose music was losing myself. And so you just kind of say, yeah, okay, whatever. And then you ignore them because
Yeah.
this is the only thing about my life that I love. This is the
Yeah.
only thing that I like about myself. This is the only thing that I feel comfortable with. I'm not going to give that up until I can't have it anymore?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you just didn't even want to comprehend the idea that it might really happen, that you might actually lose it.
Well,
Is
like
that
people are wrong every day. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you just had a podcast with Eric Weinmeier, and he climbed Mount Everest blind. And how many people have
Mm.
told him to his face that that's impossible? People are
Yeah.
wrong every day.
Yeah, definitely. But that must have been so hard. So take me on towards, so you went to university, right? Am I skipping anything major
No,
here?
it's
I mean,
okay.
obviously years of your life, but
Yeah, like me
we'll
waking up
just
eating a
gloss over
Pop
that.
Tart and doing nothing.
What
No.
flavor was the Pop Tart though?
Oh, dude.
So
I liked the strawberry or blueberry non-frosted. I was
okay,
weird,
non-frosted.
only because it was too sweet. The other ones were too
The healthy
sweet.
version.
Yeah, I guess the pastry without the added icing to it.
Yeah, a limited amount of added sugar, not
Yeah,
not added
yeah.
on top of the added.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. The real
All right.
question is toasted or not, like that's a whole thing.
I'd probably say toasted, and I think I'm probably in a minority of actually UK people that ate Pop Tarts occasionally. It's not really a thing in this country,
Yeah.
like it is in America, and I'm just basing that off my knowledge from TV shows and movies.
Oh
But yeah,
yeah.
Pop Tarts are much more of a thing there than they are here. But I definitely ate some strawberry Pop
Oh
Tarts
yeah.
with frosting.
There you go. The OG, that's like the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So humble brag, but let's move
So
on. So going to university or college, you're what, 18?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
just let's go there. Talk to me about that, and yeah, like how was your hearing when you started college? How far had it gone downhill? And yeah,
Yeah,
what was your mental
honestly,
state?
a lot of that really started at the end of my senior year. So, like I said, I mentioned it a little bit. I dislocated my leg when I was a
Yeah.
senior in high school walking. And so that was the start of me having 6 major knee procedures within a year and a half. So I was having a lot of surgeries, having a lot of medications, a lot of antibiotics. And because I had EDS, and we didn't know it at the time, my
Oh.
body fought against all of that stuff, and the
Mm.
stress and everything like that kind of created this perfect storm to blend in with your body changing at 18, because you've had this like massive rush of hormones and everything. So it was just this colossal just crap fest that was all happening at the same time. And so I was losing chunks of my hearing in my senior year. But because I had been lip reading my whole life, I really didn't understand how deeply that was going. So it's hard to say when it first really started.
Yeah.
I went to Colorado State University for vocal music education, and I was there for about a month before I started really having difficulty understanding my teachers talking to me. And so there was a month where my dream and my reality was like
Mm.
together and perfect. And I remember that feeling. Everybody says that when you're doing the thing that you're meant to do, you feel this overwhelming sense of calm. I'm a highly anxious, nervous wreck of a human being. I have never felt calm in my life. But I would say, like, if I could have gotten the closest, it would have been during that month.
Wow.
And I just felt more sure-footed than I felt calm.
Yeah.
And then it was just one barrier after another. It was the first time that I got to choose where I was sitting. Being the kid who's hard of hearing, you always sit in the
Mm.
spit zone, like front and center. The teacher's right there in your face, and you can't like sleep in the back if you're having a bad day, because they know if you're not looking at them that you have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah.
But in college, they don't know you. You don't have a teacher's note. And so I was sitting in psychology class, and it was a big room, like 400 students in it, massive class. And I wasn't at the very, very front, but I couldn't understand her talking. And so I kept getting closer and closer and closer. And pretty soon I was sitting in my designated spit zone spot, and it didn't help. And I went to the audiologist. I said to my mom, I think I might have an ear infection, because I'm really struggling to understand what's going on. And I had ended up losing about 40 decibels of sound by then. So I don't know when it truly started, but by like mid-September, early October, I was 40 decibels down from the last audiology exam that I had done,
Yeah.
which is your general understanding of speech. Most
Right.
people, if they're not shouting, will be understandable
Yeah.
there. But if it just stopped, and then by Christmas, I was legally deaf in both ears, which is around 60 decibels in both ears. And I was getting fitted for hearing aids, which were powerful up to like 80 dB or something like that. Um, I named them Hope. And then I started the next semester with my Hope because of Star Wars. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Um,
Nice.
and I was sitting in a dictation class, which was part of music theory. So it's where the teacher plays the piano and you listen and then you chart out note for note, rhythm for rhythm, what is being played. And I was just staring at the teacher, and he had this upright piano. So he was blocked. So you couldn't cheat, couldn't see his hands or nothing. And I was just staring at him, like super excited with my hearing aids jacked up as loud as they would go. And then I started looking around, and everybody else is writing things down except for me. And I was just waiting for the test to start. And he's staring at me confused, and I'm looking at him, and I started to really understand what was going on. And one by one, everybody got up, handed their tests in, and left. And I was just sitting there crying at my desk. And my teacher was like, I don't know how you can pass this class without being able to pass this part of this class. And, this is theory 2. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and they're only going to get harder and more complex and involve more kinds of things like dictation. And so I was dropped from music theory. The problem with being dropped from music theory is if you're not in music theory, you can't graduate as a music major. You can't have one without the other. And so it was within an hour of that exam that I was handed a piece of paper saying I had to change my classes and I was not going to be continuing next year as a music major. And it was so foreign to me because it just didn't make sense that this was happening. And I'm walking back to my dorm with this piece of paper that could have been written in Chinese. It just didn't make any sense. And I was walking on the sidewalk. It was winter time. And there was a bicyclist coming up behind me who had hit some ice and he couldn't really stop. And he was shouting that he was coming up on the left and he was asking me to move, and I could not hear him. And he hit me. And so I fell and I landed on one of my hearing aids, and he got up and he was fine. He's like, "Oh my gosh, are you fine?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm what?" Yeah. And then he leaves and I'm just holding this like crushed thousands of dollars piece of equipment and next to this like now muddied up piece of paper. And it was just like, okay, this is real now. Like it wasn't ignorable. It wasn't a mistake. It was very, very obvious. And there wasn't anything for me to do other than to just keep moving. You're trying to process the information, but at the same time, I have another knee surgery coming up and I can't not have classes to take over the classes that I can't be a part of anymore, or else I'll lose my insurance. And so you're limping to this office, handing them all of this broken mess of stuff. And they're just like, okay, we'll put you in this class. And I don't even really remember the rest of that year other than none of it made sense. And I
Yeah.
spiraled because, like I said before, this was a dream that I had had since I was young. And not only
Yeah.
was it my dream, it was my identity. What do you do when you feel like you've lost who you are? And how do you start that over again? And there were so many questions. And I went through stages of grief. I don't think I necessarily went through them in the same manner that they always tell you do, like bartering first and denial and then anger, then acceptance.
Yeah.
I did them all at the same time, just in rapid succession. And it would just like kind of like a, rolling the dice on what it was going to be that day, like,
Yeah.
no, this is just a mistake, I'm just going to have to take a semester off and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to change and get different hearing aids and then I'll be able to start school again, and at the same time, there was the other part of my brain that was just like, how are you waking up in the morning? Because up until this point, I just didn't really sleep much. So I was already awake, but how do you wake up without being able to hear your alarm clock? And how do you not become afraid of the dark when you can't hear
Yeah.
people coming up behind you? How do you have conversations with people who you've known your entire life? And now that you've been away from them for 6 months, you're seeing them for the first time and you can't hear them at all. And lip reading can only get you so far. And when you're stressed out and overwhelmed, lip reading it's a pipe dream. How do you go about feeling like a human being when you're a husk of a person? It was the start over that I didn't want.
Yeah. It's just unbelievable. I mean, the fact that all happened on one day as well. Like you first you had the realization yourself when you realized your peers filling out their sheets, and then you get given the letter, which normally that's going to take time, and you'd have had time to digest. But you get given that, and then you leave, like probably head just gone,
Oh,
walking a
yeah, it was a
days,
mess.
and then a bicycle. Like I just can't. This is just insane. I
Well, it's
can't.
like one of those days, I called it the day the music died. That's a very famous
Yeah.
song, American Pie. But
Yeah.
it was is one of those things where it felt like it was so outwardly funny that it couldn't be real because it was just
Yeah.
like
Like it's
watching.
out of a film.
Yeah, you're just like, surely the anvil is not going to fall from the sky. And then
Yeah.
bam, you get hit with something else. And you're just like, how much more crap can really land on my plate right
Yeah.
now? And then you
It's
turn
just
around and there's
unbelievable.
more. But sometimes that's the way life is. And I think from a now bird's eye view, jumping forward many, many years, looking back on it, it could have been so much worse. Like
Yeah.
I was a music major in a country where I wasn't worried about being persecuted for being a female getting an education. I
Mm.
was not able to pursue music in the manner that I wanted to. And that was a lot to process and manage, but I wasn't in an environment where I wasn't surrounded by people who cared. Like it could have been so much harder and so much more devastating. Um, but at the time, it felt like I got swallowed down this massive well that I had no way of figuring out how to climb out of. And I kind of stopped. I stopped existing for a little while.
Yeah. Talk to me about that period, about like when you're in the well and dealing with what I mean, pretty much depression, right? And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure lots of other things like the side things like anxiety and stress and all of the extra add-ons, but it all kind of comes back to that depression, doesn't it? Like a really heavy depression just kind of can do everything. It can mess with you physically as well as mentally, and just tell me about like how, yeah, what that was like and
It
how you dug yourself out of it as well, how you recovered from that.
I mean, and depression looks different on everybody.
Definitely.
But it was hard. Like I remember how many steps it was from my bed to the bathroom and how I had to really decide if I was so desperate that I had to get up to go to the bathroom, or could I just lay here longer? Like these were the conversations that were the heaviest of my mind at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I I ended up finishing the semester and then going home. And going home, you're moving back in with your family, moving back in with your parents. This is supposed to be the time when you're striking out on your own and
Yeah.
figuring out who you are. And it felt like a massive slap in the face. And I was a very angry, bitter person. And there's so many people who I've talked to and I've met, and they're just like, oh my gosh, you just have so much grace about the whole thing. I was like, not at that moment. And I
Mm.
think that it would be the biggest and worst lie that I could tell of my life to say that it wasn't really hard, because it was. And I needed the opportunity to mourn. I think that is one of the most difficult parts of recovery, is that you fall down the bottom of a well and everybody's like, all right, we'll start climbing back out of it. They're uncomfortable with seeing you be upset. They're uncomfortable
Yeah.
with feeling the weight of your darkness around them. And so they're like trying to give you all these sage words of advice of how you're going to get through this, or how the world is such a beautiful place and all the dreams that you can create. And in that moment, all I really needed was for somebody to shut up, sit next to me in silence, and just be there, you know?
Yeah. It's okay to feel like shit, Mandy,
Yeah, it's
like
okay. It's okay to give up for a day, like
yeah.
to really allow yourself to say, okay, I'm not ever going to be that person again. That person
Yeah.
no longer exists. And it's okay to be sad about that, and I really do feel like a massive part of my recovery was started because I allowed myself to say, this is a really god awful situation I have found myself in, and this hurts,
Yeah.
and allow that to be true. It needed to be real before I could say that this is not going to be my forever. And, a lot of how I climbed out of that well was truly one small baby step at a time. And it wasn't massive victories. It was having conversations with some people, but also really realizing that I have an active choice to make. I can choose to sit at the bottom of this well for the rest of my life. And every single day, I'm going to wake up, if I wake up, and it's going to be exactly the same as this. It's not going to be better. It's not necessarily going to be worse. It'll be exactly like this. But if I crack a door open and do one thing different, there's a possibility of change, there's a possibility of growth. And so I realized a couple of really big weights that I needed to lift off of me first before I could start actively working on creating dreams again. And the first was, I had never loved myself. I've always been an anxiety ball of judgment. And even before, when I was pursuing my dreams, I didn't like myself very much. Um, and so I made a point to start finding one small thing about myself that I liked. Could be one curl. Be like, okay, today, this doesn't piss me off. That's it. And then tomorrow, it couldn't be this curl. It had to be something else. And eventually, you run out of hair.
Yeah.
Eventually, you run out of freckles. Eventually, you run out of excuses, and you start really thinking about, I really appreciate this. I really love these people. I really like this. And I was working my way into accepting myself as I was then, not trying to somehow chase being who I was, but learning to start over. And
Yeah.
then, two, I needed to give myself permission to modify my dreams.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people saw me fail very publicly, but um, it's only really a failure if that's how it stops. So it's just a part of your journey if you get up and keep moving forward.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
so I really sat down and took the time to analyze why I loved music education. What was it about that dream that hurt so hard to let go? And truly, it was the community aspect of it all. Being able to give people the tools to express themselves, being able to be a part of a team, and to allow people to come together. And I said, okay, well, if that is truly the core of that dream, why can't I do the core of that dream in all of these other different ways? So I started taking ASL classes, got involved with the deaf community, found myself surrounded by incredibly smart, intelligent, brilliant people who have a communication barrier, but that's it. You know,
Yeah.
everything else they have, you know, they're people, and people are people. They're
Yeah.
incredible, and they're innovative, and they're creative, and they're problem solvers because they're forced to be problem solvers on a daily basis. But
Yeah.
they were successful human beings. And so that was just like, okay, I'm going to be a successful human being. And then allowing myself to be pushed by the people who cared for me the most. My dad pushed me to start playing guitar with him, not because he wanted me to like somehow magically discover music again, but that was our way to communicate.
Yeah.
And my dad at the time, I had lost my hearing. His father died. And so it hit him really hard, in almost an unexpectedly hard, because they weren't ever really that close, but it hit him hard. And so we were
Yeah.
both mourning together. And so we would just sit and play guitar and not really talk about life, not really talk about anything heavy. Just I was watching his fingers and I was watching the chords. You don't forget that just because you can't hear them. The shapes are the same.
Yeah.
Pushing down on the strings is the same. Strumming is the same. You just don't get quite the same enjoyment in the manner that I thought, you know, was the only way to get enjoyment from playing guitar. However, you know, this whole journey had opened me up to really paying attention to different things. And I was noticing the vibrations that were coming and that I could feel on my fingertips. I was noticing it rumbling on my chest as I'm holding this instrument against my skin. And as I'm strumming, I can feel it digging into my thumb, and I'm paying attention to the sound that I'm creating, even though I'm not digesting it the same. I'm experiencing music. And it was the start of this journey of discovery of music is not dead because I can't hear it. It's still there. I'm the one who gave up. And
Yeah.
just because I can't hear it in a traditional, normal, quote unquote sense doesn't mean that I don't get this amazing opportunity to experience it in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I truly fell in love with music for the second time.
When you were playing the guitar with your dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so at that point, you're feeling it through your fingers, through your chest, like you say. Did you think, wow, like, was it a bit of an epiphany moment where you're like, oh, like,
Kind of, but it wasn't, you know, like everybody's like, oh, did you just like close your eyes and just blah, and just there it was. No, no, I was just thankful to be not so angry that I
yeah,
started to say yes to things. Because,
yeah,
like I said, you can play guitar without being able to hear it. You can play the piano without being able to hear it. You can play the piano without being able to see. You know, all of that stuff is arbitrary. You're just experiencing it differently. And I had to move past being frustrated that it was different. But
yeah,
it was a brilliant moment of being able to be at peace with it being different.
yeah,
And I'm a very nerdy person. I love learning. And so it was like a massive challenge. It's like, okay, we're going to see how deep this rabbit hole goes and chase it to the end and see what we can do. But I
yeah,
genuinely believe that if all I had ever done was dared to play the tambourine, the fact that I was connected with music again in some small manner would have been just as euphoric, because it was getting back a part of my identity. Even if it
yeah,
wasn't the same, it was a massive part of who I was. And it was on my terms.
yeah. Are you able to get much enjoyment from music now, like in terms of the vibrations and sense, like feeling it in a way? Or is it, like you say, it's not the same, but do you enjoy it? Is there enjoyment there with it?
Yeah, I mean, like I enjoy dancing. I enjoy dancing to the beat of music. I enjoy learning. Right now, the way that I learn is by using visual tuners. And so I'll
Mm.
take a visual tuner and I'll sit and I'll make noise and I'll see what noise I'm making and then isolate it to one note and then do a bunch of scales and watch myself make those notes and feel where the vibrations are the strongest and kind of mark them out and get an understanding of what I'm creating versus what's there, you know. It's work. It's a lot of work, but I think the parts about music that I enjoy far more is that I pay a lot more attention to the lyrics of the songs. I pay a lot more intentional thought to tone and kind of how they're going about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in some ways I have grown my appreciation for music more than I had when I could hear it. And a
Yeah.
hidden talent and a hidden blessing of the whole thing, I don't get tired of the same song because, you know, like I can play the same song for 8 hours straight, you know? It's just like you don't get annoyed with it and it doesn't get stuck in your head, you know? So
Yeah.
it's quite a fun thing to be able to do. I can really just play anything.
Yeah. It's amazing. Just to zip back a little bit, I'd love for
Sure.
you to be able to just spend a few minutes talking about EDS,
Yeah.
and like your experience with that. I think it's Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, because you mentioned a minute ago that you didn't know it was that until very late, right?
Yeah, it's a connective tissue disorder, and I also have underlying autoimmune diseases that we're not really sure exactly what they all are. I know some of them, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know all of them. And basically I'm just a genetic mess. Um, but I it affects my hearing, it affects my vision, it affects my skin, it affects my organs and my joints, and I dislocate a lot and I'm in pain all the time, but it's part of my life and I've learned to appreciate my life, and some days I'm doing well and other days I can't walk and I have to be in a wheelchair, and um it used to really scare me and piss me off, but this is my life. And so I can be scared and pissed off, or I can just live my life and
Yeah.
appreciate the day as it is. I woke up this morning. Not everybody did. So it's
Yeah.
already a blessing of a day. And just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean that my life has less value and that my day is going to be less productive.
Yeah.
It's just different. And
Yeah.
it gives me empathy and gives me um, a different perspective of people and patience. And I
Yeah.
think that in a lot of ways, it has given me a lot more than it has taken away. But, you know, learning music was not my suggestion. I was surrounded by people who pushed me past my comfort zone. My dad asked me to play guitar, and my dad also asked me to learn a song and sing it as a challenge. And I didn't think that I was going to be able to do it. I was very pessimistic about the whole thing, but he's my dad. So I said yes. And I still, to this day, have no idea why those words came out of my mouth that said, yeah, I'll do that.
So how old were you at this point? How old were you
This
when he asked you this?
was maybe fall or so of 2008. So it was like 19 and a half ish, 20,
Yeah. Okay.
somewhere around then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I learned a song called Come Home by One Republic. My sister Sam had heard it on the radio. She really liked it. So I found the sheet music for it and took a tuner and found the first note, which was a C, and did a bunch of scales. And I sat and worked on that song for 10 hours straight. And at the end of it, my dad came home and he was like, well, you want to give it a try? And I was just like, what do I have to lose? I was expecting to fail anyway, so I had
Yeah.
very, very little care of how things were going to come out. And then um, the funny thing about singing, if you've been singing for your whole life, it's a muscle. Talking is a muscle, speaking, singing, all of it's a muscle. And so utilizing your awareness of that muscle really does play into being able to maintain. Um, it's not like I forgot because I couldn't hear. I just entirely forgot how to talk, you know. You don't get that card taken away from you. It just modifies a bit.
Yeah.
But I worked very hard and I wasn't expecting much and closed my eyes and I kind of said, screw it. Whatever happens, happens. What's the worst that can happen? I lose my hearing. Haha, it's already happened. And that was like the biggest fear of my life. And it already came
Yeah.
true. So bring it on. And I remember I opened my eyes and my dad was crying and I thought it was because it was that bad. Um, and he's like, no, that was awesome. You did it. And he was very overwhelmed and I was very pessimistic. Because
Yeah.
again, he's your parent. I've
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
refrigerators covered with crappy art from their children that they think is the most beautiful piece of macaroni I've ever seen in my life. And I'm just like, not really. This is really bad. You know, like
Yeah.
they're a parent, they're biased, they love you
Yeah.
too much, to be
Yeah,
honest.
you automatically think he's trying to protect my feelings.
Yeah,
He doesn't want to, he doesn't want to hurt me. And
right. Right. And so we recorded it on this tiny little at home recorder that was like $30. And I sent it and had my old voice coach listen to it and give me her real feedback. And she was like, oh, you recorded this before you lost your hearing. I was like, no, I recorded that yesterday. And she was just like, well, you have to start taking voice lessons again. And then she started being the person to push me. So all of
yeah.
a sudden now I'm taking voice lessons again. And she's like, well, what do you want to sing? Because that's never been a question before. When you're in school for music, you sing what they tell
Yeah.
you to sing, you know. Now I get to choose. So I chose jazz. And she's like, all right, you're going to sing at a jazz club. And I was like, excuse me? Like, are you serious right now? Like, I've puked on people before having to do things by myself in this manner. I don't enjoy people staring at me. And now you want me to sing for the first time in front of an audience and not be able to hear myself. You're freaking out of your mind. And she's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? And nothing, you know, I embarrassed myself. I can only really be embarrassed if I choose to be embarrassed. So I showed up. There was like 3 people eating dinner. So very low key, random Thursday. And I sang My Funny Valentine. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. I can't even tell you how many times I threw up before and after.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. It was a nerve-wracking experience, but I was like clutched onto the piano for dear life and I was feeling the beats of how many measures before I had to open my mouth and have something come out. And like every 5 seconds, I would like sing what I thought was the first note. And the pianist would show me where I was on the piano and then where I was supposed to be. And I was like, so I would modify myself and be at that note. And then right before we started, I did it again. He's like, you're good. And so I just started. And I finished the song and I was overwhelmed that I had just overcome one of my big fears that I had had before losing my hearing.
Yeah.
And the owners were like, can you come back next week? And so then I was singing there every Thursday, and it was like from one song to like 3 hours. And then I was having my own concerts there on Saturday nights sometimes. And then a couple patrons asked me to make an album so that they could keep, you know, my music with them when they couldn't come. And so then I made Smile, which I made to kind of prove to myself I could do it. And then Smile led to After You've Gone, which led to All of Me. And All of Me, I started writing my own music for the first time because of Eric. You know, we had a
Yeah.
conversation and he's like, "Why aren't you writing your own music?" I was like, "Isn't what I'm doing hard enough? You know, like, isn't this enough for people to be just like, wow, no, like, you've got to keep pushing me further." And I was like, it's scary. It's hard enough and scary enough to sing a song you know people love. It's way different to sing a song that no one has ever heard of. No one has heard this song to know if it's good or bad.
Yeah,
That's terrifying. And he was like, "Well, what's
definitely.
the worst that can happen?" And I didn't have an answer for it. And I repeat that question to myself so much that I started to realize that I really do focus on the negative side of it all. What's the worst, worst, worst? How is this going to break? How is this going to go wrong? How am I going to
Yeah.
break today? Instead of asking the better question of what's the best that can happen? It's the best that can happen by pushing myself or expressing myself or giving it a try, even if I fail, and giving myself an opportunity to learn from the experience. What's the best that can happen? And it ended up being one of the best things that I have done in my career, and not just as a part of my career, but as a person. I was able to say how I really felt. It's an amazing therapy tool. Because even though I was starting to sing again, I was still pissed. I was still angry. I still didn't love myself. And with
Yeah, you
time,
still wouldn't have chosen that situation as well. Like if you could go
no,
back.
no, I was like, can't I just be like a dental assistant and not have to think about this ever again? You know, like, um, but you know, I wrote like 6 songs in a matter of a couple weeks, and one of them, one at the very beginning was Try, and I was just making a point to write a song of how I actually felt. It was the first song that I really wrote about myself.
Mm.
And it was just me saying that my life is screwy. I have no idea which way is up. And I've given up on myself. And I know that if I continue to just give up on myself, that my life is going to amount to nothing. And I really would like to get up off the floor, even if it's a failure. At least I can try. And analyzing the biggest barriers of my life, which weren't not being able to hear. You know, everybody thinks that not being able to hear is such a massive, crippling disability. Is it a disability? Yes. Is it a barrier? Yes. Is it so crippling that I can't be successful as a human being? Absolutely not. Like I find more enjoyment in my world as it is right now than I ever did when I could hear. I truly love myself. I love being different. I love being able to fall asleep anywhere I want to. I love being able to close my eyes and ignore conversations from my mom if I want to. I love I love my life. And the barrier that I'm facing is not my EDS or not being able to hear or losing my dream of being a music educator. It was I, time and time again, tell myself I'm going to fail, so I don't try. I, time and time again, bully myself and judge myself into an oblivion, and I cannot get past the fear of myself. And if I would just get out of my own way, I'm really curious what could happen. And so the bridge of that song is the only thing in my way is me, because life is life. I don't have a person to blame to say, hey, this is the reason why. There's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons why, but also life is life. We're humans, we break. It's hard. And that's true for every single human out there. Your life, just because your experiences haven't been quite the same as mine, people come up to me every day and they're like, oh my gosh, you're just very inspiring, because I would have never been able to deal with this, and your problems and your pain are so much bigger than mine. I was like, that's bullcrap. your problems are just as big as mine because they're yours. You're the one who has to live them. You're the one who's experiencing them. So they're real to you. You're just looking at mine from an outsider's perspective. They're just as hard. Some people waking up in the morning is a struggle, and that is just as hard as losing somebody's hearing. It's yours. But
Yeah.
you can have these human experiences and you can draw from them and become encouraged and inspired that you're not experiencing them alone. Or you can allow the well to keep you down dark forever and never do anything with your life. It's a choice.
Well, you made the right choice.
I feel like I have to make that choice often, but yeah, thank you.
A continuous choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Every day is a new battle.
Yeah. It's true for everyone. And, you choose to be a nice person. You choose to smile. You choose quite often. And it's lovely when you have days that are easy and, everything is happy. And, those are moments that you live for. But at the end of the day, it's still a choice. It's your choice to say that this is a beautiful moment, that you're going to actually allow yourself to live in it. Yeah, you're going to smile and giggle because somebody made a joke that was funny. It's still a choice. And you have the amazing opportunity to choose, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, you are inspirational, Mandy. Whatever, like I know, inspirational people don't like to hear that all the time, but I'm hanging on every word right now.
You.
It's awesome, and your songs, like I have no words. Like this is just so they're amazing, and you've written them after losing your hearing.
Yeah,
that's like we said earlier. That seems impossible. That shouldn't. Like a blind person on top of Everest, these things shouldn't happen. This is potentially even more like, stopped you in your tracks. Like how did you do? I don't even know how to ask my question.
One baby step at a time. I think once I lost my hearing, I ended up gaining like the best superpower of my musical career, which was not being able to hear myself anymore because I wasn't able to judge myself. I wasn't able to criticize myself and pick myself apart so that I was afraid to open my mouth at all.
Yeah.
I get the awesome experience to just be me. And writing music, whether that's lyrics or actual music or all of it, is allowing yourself to break past judging yourself and just express. And, I teach kids around the country how to start, and I give them a small little exercise of changing the lyrics to Happy Birthday. I mean, almost everyone in the world knows the song Happy Birthday. It's only 4 lines and you know the melody. So you don't have to worry about creating the melody or creating the structure. All you're doing is changing the words. And when you do that, you're giving yourself permission to be silly, to be creative. And then in addition to that, and something that is, again, moving past judging yourself, I don't throw anything away. I don't tell myself, well, this is stupid. How do you know it's stupid? Some of the weirdest things that I have written have also been one word from that weird thing that I said inspired another song with a completely different thought. You have to be able to get to a point where you can write stuff down and not care what comes out so that you can really just allow your thought and your emotion to just be poured out onto a page. And the rest of it, I just let go. I sing what feels nice, what I like the feeling as I'm singing it. I don't care what the sound is. I know the rules. I know the construct of keys and what notes work inside of that key, but I don't think to myself, oh, that's a catchy melody. I sing what tickles and what like feels warm and just the overall feeling versus how it sounds to you. I don't care
from your memory. From your memory of sounds, do you like kind of have ideas though in your head about your songs, like how you think they sound and things like that?
Yeah, but
Or not so much?
normally it's with like different instruments than I'm capable of. You know, like sometimes like I'll picture like what I remember a cello sounding like, and that'll be like the instrument that I'm playing in my mind instead of me singing. It's actually an orchestra, you know, and a lot of the times there's not an orchestra on the stage. So I
Yeah.
think I think the core of my idea of what it sounds like versus the reality of what it sounds like are very different.
Yeah.
But I think that's also wicked cool, you know,
It
because
is wicked cool.
yeah, I get to have a completely different narrative going on in my mind than what you get to
Yeah.
experience. So in part, I
Yeah.
get something from myself.
Yeah. No, it is wicked cool. And like, there must have been a weird thing to process though, to think I'm putting all this work in, I'm writing these songs, I'm performing these songs, and yet I'm never going to be able to really hear my song.
I don't think
Like, that
about
must have
it that
been,
way. I really
no,
don't.
good. Please
Mostly
don't start thinking about it like that now.
now it's going to cripple me. No, I don't, because it's so weird. Like if I think when I'm standing on the stage, this is the work that's going on. These are the measures that I'm actively counting while I'm singing in English, signing in ASL, which is a different language, seeing ahead of me a staff and just doing interval changes the entire time. If I really stop and think, oh, well, what if I mess up? Then all you're going to do is mess up. Like
Yeah.
I've gotten to a point where I have messed up. I've messed up on stage many, many, many times. And you know what happens? I stop, we giggle about it, I find the right note, and I keep moving forward. And the audience doesn't explode. In fact, they find it endearing because I'm a human and I make mistakes.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're going together, we're on a journey, and it brings us closer. So I think this whole idea that I have to experience music in one way, or I have to be able to understand in a digestible form that you're used to, is weird. It's
Yeah.
not
No.
necessary. I feel
It's like a
bad
different
that you
art
will
form for
never
you
be
now.
able to experience music the way that I have it in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a completely different like art form, like way. Yeah. It's all completely different.
Yeah.
It's amazing. In the early days,
Yeah.
did you ever think like everybody's lying to me? Maybe it's not good. Like, how do you know? Did you ever think like that? Because I would have.
Yeah. I mean, like, who's going to be the one person who walks up to the deaf girl and says, "Oh, you know?" No, I mean, I truly, at some point, you just don't care, you know?
Yeah.
And enough people have said that it's
Yeah.
helpful to them. And I've also seen people like really be on this emotional journey with me. Like, so they're
Yeah.
understanding what I'm trying to communicate, and they get lost in the loveliness of what it is I'm trying to create. And you can see that. You can watch grown men cry and just like hold hands with their wife or their partner, or you know, like you can see these moments come to life, and
Yeah.
you stop caring if there's a person in there who thinks it's not as good as somebody else, because
Yeah.
I'm expressing myself. And if
Yeah.
that's appreciated, then awesome. And you know, I have thought there's a really famous lady, her name was Florence, and she was like a horrible singer, and everybody knew her as a horrible singer. Meryl Streep did a movie about her, and she would sell out like these massive places, and people just loved her because it was just endearing and she was magical, and she just didn't seem to notice or care that she was god awful. And it's like, if at the end of my life, a lot of people see me as a joke, but at the same time, I've encouraged and inspired millions of people, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Still a win. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
For the record though, I love your music. It's really, really good. The lyrics are amazing, and the sound and your voice and just honestly, I've been walking around the house singing this time today.
Thank you.
You know, on repeat. Like,
Well, thank
it's really good. And you mentioned a second ago, like making grown men cry and stuff. Like, honestly, I nearly cried the other day when I watched your X Factor audition. Not X Factor, America's Got Talent.
Yeah. Man,
Like
me
I was
too.
really like I was like trying not to, like trying to keep that.
Gosh, that was such a
So
scary day.
talk to me about that whole process. About like how did you decide I'm going to go and try and do that?
Well, it wasn't a dream of mine to be on a competition television show. Like being in front of people is scary enough. Having people judge you for their living is way worse.
Yeah,
You're opening the
yeah,
floodgates for all the worst kinds of criticism in the world. But I had the opportunity to audition, and um, I asked the people who were closest to me, what do you think about me doing this? And most of them were saying the same question. They were like, well, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, I want to encourage people. I want to show that it's okay to fail. I want to be a living proof of somebody who fails consistently and keeps getting up. I want to show a different side of what a disability looks like and make people smile. And they're like, well, why wouldn't you want to do it on a bigger scale? What's the worst that can happen?
mm.
And so I went out on that stage with no intention of getting a golden buzzer. I didn't truly even know what that meant. I had not like religiously watched the show. I've never seen one of those moments and known what that connected to. And
Yeah,
even if you get a golden buzzer, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a viral sensation that takes over the world, you know.
yeah,
No one had any clue as to what was about to happen, but my intentions were, I want to encourage one person. And if I can start one conversation or change one person's viewpoint as to how their day is, then even if I get X'd off the show, it's 100% a win. And I think that ended up being the calming factor that got me through the audition. And
yeah.
it ended up being a crazy situation. That video collectively, like the one on Facebook, has been seen over 300 million times, and then there's another version of it that's been seen 100 million times, and then the other one on YouTube is like 40 million. You add them all together and it's over
There's a 70
600.
million
Yeah,
as
like
well.
a crazy amount of views. And
Yeah.
it's been something where like I'll go to Nepal and I'll be on the top of a mountain in the middle of BF nowhere, and there's a plane that's held together with hope and duct tape and bird poop, and there's 5 people on this flight, and I'll turn and one of them's like, golden buzzer, and I'm just like, how like I had the incredible opportunity to encourage masses, and not for being the best singer on the show or the most flashy or the most beautiful or the most dramatic. I got to touch people's lives because it was just myself and just a real fragile human being who had been through a lot, who just wanted to encourage other people. And I think that spoke volumes.
You did. It was amazing. I guess you have very fond memories of that day. Uh,
Sort of. I was very sick. I had
oh
bronchitis.
yeah.
I had bronchitis at the time, and then from
No
that
way.
point, at through the end of the show, I ended up having pneumonia. I was in the hospital on Hollywood Boulevard during the show.
What?
So like I was singing "Release Me," and in the back of my mind, I was like, "Release me, let me go." But
That's
yeah,
crazy.
no, like that day, the first day was like, God, I want to say 15 hours. Like by the time the golden buzzer part happened, I was so tired. I didn't hardly know what was going on anymore. And then there was still another 2 or 3 hours that we had to be there. And so it was, I think that at the very end of the audition that you can see on online, you hear me say, "What just happened?" Because I truly didn't know. And it was something I was sharing a room with my dad because he came with me, and he was on his bed and I was on my bed, and neither one of us were sleeping because we were just so like unaware of life at that point. And I would just like every 5 minutes, I'd just like, what just happened? He's like, your life just changed. I don't know how it changed, but your life just changed. And I'd like put my head back on the pillow. What do you think's going to happen? And he's like, I've got no idea, like, and we were both just giggling and just not sure what was going to happen. And then it came out and it was crazy.
Yeah. It was amazing. I will link that video, by the way, in the description just for anybody that wants to watch it. But how long was that whole America's Got Talent process then, from that day till like the finals, right? Because I think you came fourth on.
I did. So the audition part is not live. It was filmed in April and it came out in June. It came out on D-Day, June 6th. So I had this massive secret that I was not allowed to tell anybody because they wouldn't air it and I could get sued. Like, it was like, how do you hold that in? You're like, then, like very few people knew I auditioned anyway. So that made it easier because, it's not like I'm going to tell everybody I'm going to go do this. It wasn't the be all end all of my life. I just was scared enough. I didn't need to be broadcasting it to other people. So that made it easier. But like, my immediate family knew I auditioned and they're like, so I was like, I can't tell you. And Dad was like, I can't say anything. And they're like, you can give us a hint. Give us like a meter. And I was just like, I didn't make a fool of myself. I think that's what I ended up telling most people. I didn't make a fool of myself. And then it came out and like Lady Gaga was tweeting about me. It was weird.
Really?
Like in the moments I was being written up on Rolling Stone magazine and BMI and all these different news outlets. And I think the coolest part of all of that was it was an opportunity for there to be a lot of conversations. And at the end, because you have the audition came out June 6th, then you go back in August because I got a golden buzzer, I skipped the live beginning stuff, like the competition part to get to the live shows, because that was an automatic, you go to a live show. So I started again in August. And so I was there for basically 2 months in LA, sick, like unbelievably sick.
No.
But I'm most proud less of how many views that had gotten. That's irrelevant. But we started kind of like this rolling change. We had a sign language front and center viewed, because if we weren't having captions here, I wouldn't understand. Having this conversation would be a huge barrier. So I need to be able to have tools at my disposal, and there's nothing wrong with needing help. I got to be an example towards other students, other kids, that there's nothing wrong with needing an interpreter, and it's a beautiful language. So we got to introduce signing with music for the first time on that stage. We brought closed captions to the green room for the first time. The video right before Release Me is the longest period of silence on network television history, and it's not negative. It's just you coming into my world for a moment. And we encouraged a lot of high schools and colleges to start including ASL as a foreign language, and ASL clubs and sign language clubs in their respected languages popped up in mass all over the world. And it ended up becoming something that you could really see positive impacts from. I was getting messages from people all over the world, and randomly, like a person from Brazil would like come up and like have a poster with my face on it. And they had a massive vote to allow people with disabilities to be a part of the mainstream school system at that time. And I was added press, added push for people, and my face was plastered all over Brazil with my little ukulele and the golden confetti coming down and it passed. It wasn't because of me, but I got to be one more example of success to maybe push a couple more people to actually vote, you know? So there got to be a lot of positive impact because I dared to put myself past my comfort zone for the purpose of encouraging other people.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, that kind of ties in a little bit to No Barriers and like the things you did with them. Do you want to just kind of talk about that organization and what you do with that organization for a few minutes?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I started as an ambassador for No Barriers. I'm now on the board, and it's an incredible group of people with and without disabilities who are working together as a community to help encourage and be innovative so that the dreams that you want to accomplish, you're not necessarily navigating through that alone, that you have people to push you past your comfort zone, to cheer you on, to hold you accountable, and to also kind of remind you when you're starting to make decisions that don't connect with your goals. It's a community. That's what it is. And I've been blessed to be able to be friends with a lot of the people there. Eric being one of my friends, Kyle Maynard, who was born without like arms or legs.
Yeah.
He's climbed Mount
Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro, and he was in Nike commercials, and Amy
Yeah.
Purdy, who is an incredible force of a woman, and her amazing dancing and snowboarding abilities, this, you know, just killing it. She's an incredible human being. She happens to also be a double amputee due to medical things, but they're again and again and again examples of people being human. I know that we talked a little bit about J.R. Martinez before we started this podcast, and um, he was a military man who ended up getting blown up. These are not superhumans. They're just humans that made incredibly difficult choices to find and charter a new path. And they didn't do it alone. They did it because they were encouraged and loved by other people. And if I can encourage and love people as a thank you, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And if there's a person out there who has a dream that blew up in their face and they are really wanting to find a way back or modify or analyze the nitty gritty of what the actual dream was and create a brand new dream, I would love to be a living example of a person who has failed again and again and again, and it's perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay to try. It's perfectly okay to fail. And you have the ability to pursue those dreams if you're brave enough to try.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, that's really cool. And trying is, I've seen that on a few places that you've written that, I think maybe on your website or something. And yeah, that's such a simple thing, but it's so important,
it's
isn't
so
it? To
hard.
just keep trying. Yeah. Some
hard.
days particularly, yeah. Like you said, like we said earlier, some days like you really have to try just to get out of bed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And other days, like you're going on stage in front of however many people and throwing up and while having bronchitis and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. There was a really funny
That's
moment though when I was in an ambulance going to the hospital, and this was right before the semifinals, and one of the guys who was in the ambulance, he was like, "She can't die. I need to know what happens next week." And I was like, "That's your question? I have 106 fever. I would like to just not die." Like yeah, there's so many crazy things that I have lived through, and navigated, and you look back on it and you think, gosh, that seems impossible to have gotten this far. But when you're doing it one tiny baby step at a time, you look back after years and years of walking and you realize just how far you can go, and how much further you can go.
Yeah, when you break it down into chunks, yeah, the little bite-sized bits.
Yeah.
Because if somebody had said to you that day, I guess, when you'd got hit by that bicycle, like, you're going to go on to be a famous and super successful singer, a jazz singer, musician,
Sure.
and you're going to inspire hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world. Like, you would have just...
I would have probably drop kicked you in the throat, like, why are you doing this to me, But it's true. I think, the human spirit and your ability to heal is incredible. And I really do chalk it up to having people in my life. And if I had sage words of advice to anybody, if you don't have...
Well, actually,
if you don't...
That's interesting. In a minute, I was going to ask you for a message to everybody listening. So just do that now. Let's do that.
Sage words of advice. To surround yourself with genuine people who can cheer you on, who can help lift you up when you fall, who can sit there in silence and let you cry. Relationships like that take time and effort, and you can't allow yourself to just be surrounded by people who are just going to take from you all the time. But having a community and actively working towards having a community is one of the best decisions that you can make. And it seems so simple, but it doesn't matter what field or what dream you have, you still need to have people in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose when you talk about building a community, you're talking about, helping people, keeping people close, being nice to people, and favors are reciprocal and that kind of thing.
Sharing their dreams just as much as you want them to share in yours, being a person who can, even when you're having a rough go, to be able to cheer somebody's successes on, even when you're not being successful, it goes both ways. And at the end of the day, we're all human and we all break. And if you can celebrate the fact that you are fallible and then rise together, it's quite a beautiful endeavor to make.
Yeah, amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to say just to anybody watching or listening before we kind of wrap this up? Any other, it doesn't have to be anything inspirational or, specific. It can be anything, and it doesn't have to be anything at all, but just the floor is yours.
Okay. I mean, as a small soapbox, after losing my hearing and learning sign language and having a form of communication again, it was a very, very big awareness. I've been struggling with it my whole life, that communication is the biggest gift of love that you can give. And taking the time to include people around you, but also if there's a language that you want to learn it. There's no negative to having more ways to communicate with people.
Yeah. Especially if it's sign language.
Sign language, but my extended family, they're French. And so even though I can't hear, I'm learning French. And because it's the biggest gift of love that you can give. And even if I'm struggling with it and if I'm out of crap, they see that I'm putting in the work and the effort because I want to communicate with them. And they're inspired to learn English or sign language so that they can communicate better with me. And there's no negative to that. None.
Absolutely. No, you're right. This was amazing, Mandy.
Thank
you so much. I'm going to put all of your social medias and some of these videos, like the audition video and anything, some of your music videos. I'll put all the descriptions in, all the links in this description.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you again for today. This was so great.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on this fun podcast. I'm looking forward to checking out. You've got a couple on here that I see that you've done. I'm looking forward to checking them out as well.
Cool. Thanks again. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mandy as much as I did. She really is a masterpiece. Check out the links in the description and please give Mandy a follow on social media. Thanks for watching the episode. Be nice, be happy, be cool.